Hi guys, and welcome to yet another Dash Devcast. Today it will be a bit shorter video. I just want to show you a few features that I've been focusing on last couple of versions, especially the AOT that was the sole focus of the latest version that was released today, which is 0.4.4, to help you basically publish for AOT update. AOT platforms, because as you know that all these visual scripting tools have problems with AOT platforms because they are mostly run through reflection, and code stripping on AOT platforms will basically make your code, which is accessed only by reflection, disappear in your final build. So you need to explicitly define these assemblies, etc. So let me show you. First, I will start with what's new in debugging, uh, because some of you didn't find the basic debugging so feasible for Dash. Also using the debug node in all the places is not really a way to go, because it's okay if you want to debug some node flow data in a particular part of the graph, but to just get the complex overview, what is running on what target, in which node, ATCs, it's not really good to add basically a debug node after each of your nodes. So I've created a custom debug console for Dash that only debugs basically the Dash stuff. It's still in an initial phase, so let me know all the features that you would like to see there, and I will add them as I see fit, basically. So let me show you. We will run this basic menu. We run dozens of times in our videos, and now you see in the debug console what is happening exactly, in what order. You also have time, which controller fired this execution, because for example in the menu demo that I did uh, 2 weeks ago, you have a different controllers communicating between themselves using events. So you would see that how basically they fire the owner controller fired an event, and then one of the screen controllers listening to it would fire the nodes. Then you see what graph uh, is firing the execution. Basically this says that is a bound graph of the screen one controller, what node is executing, and on what target. This was a main issue for most people, that they couldn't get the targets right, so they had to debug if it's the target there or not. I'm still looking into more feasible user experience when it comes to retargeting, but this should really help in debugging your problems when you see that this animate scale is targeting button, and you see right away, okay, but I didn't want to target the button. Also, you can specify what kind of info you want to see. For example, you only want to see the target, or also you can filter by string. So now you only see all the relevant debug messages for that target. Additional feature that's quite helpful is that you can jump to a node that fired this event or this debug. So for example, retarget to children, I can go to node and it will automatically get to that node. You can also clear set some maximum logging. It will log all the messages. It will just show you the last 10. So for example, if I just fire it now, we still get logged all the messages that were happening during this execution, but now we only see the 10 of them. So if I increase it, you will see all of them. This is helpful if there is a lot of stuff happening and your UI gets overwhelmed, basically. Okay, let's move to the other new feature, which was the sole purpose of the latest release, as I mentioned, and that's the AOT. Because for those that are not so familiar with any visual scripting stuff or basically stuff that's happening using reflection, which is, for example, the encalc stuff and etc. The problem is that if I am calling a method using reflection, because the data, what method I want to call actually is in a string format, for example, or in some kind of JSON format, it's some kind of node format. The compiler doesn't know that I am calling this method because there is no strong reference to this method or to this type and etc. So during a compilation on AOT platforms using the IL2 CPP, there is a stripping layer basically during the building that will basically detect all the code that's not getting called. For example, if you are using in the dash graph some kind of object that or type that's not anywhere inside your code base, the builder will not know that you are using it, and it will strip it outside of your binaries, and then obviously you will get the error during runtime that this is missing. For example, we are using Odin for serialization, and Odin by default, a lot of the stuff inside it will get stripped because it's only used through reflection. So to target this issue, I created a special editor, which is basically an array implementation of some of the Odin's internal stuff, because Odin can and it has util features that can scan a project to find types that are basically used by Odin, or that are serialized by Odin, and it will create you can create an assembly from it, etc. But this scanner doesn't work for Dash because I'm using some custom implementation. For example, Dash controller doesn't extend an serializable callback, so it's serialized by Unity, but some of the properties inside the Dash controller are serialized by it's a mixed stuff, so Odin cannot detect it. So I had to basically implement my own scanner, uh, which will go through, or will try to go through, all dash graphs and pick out all the types that are referenced by these dash graphs. So let's just scan it. You can scan it using now scan. Okay, we don't have a saved scene. So we save it. Now we scanned all the types that are used inside our dash graphs in this scene. It's automatically alphabetically sorted, so that's why dash is there. You see the namespace and the type. I'm just I'm just parsing these types to more readable format, because if you saw the actual name of the type, it's not as readable. So this is basically the default readable type, for example, for generics. So this is all the types that it found that you are definitely using inside your dash graphs. For example, for now it doesn't scan the dash graphs that are saved as assets. It only scans the dash graphs that are bound on dash controllers, because it scans through all the dash controllers. It will also scan for all dash controllers in all scenes inside your project, which are specified inside your project. So, for example, in these build settings, if you have multiple scenes here, it will go over all of them and try to find the dash controllers. It will also check if there are prefabs which contain some dash controllers, and uh, try to scan them, obviously. So I will add a feature to scan the dash graphs, dash graph assets as well in later date. Probably in the next version, what is what I mean. You can also remove these types if you don't want to, for example, that you can also scan again and they will be back. You can also add an explicit type definition that you want to include for AOT platforms. For example, if you want something that's not scanned there, or for example, for now, if I'm not scanning the asset graphs, you can explicitly add the types that you know that you use inside the asset graphs. So, for example, this will basically list all the types that are inside the assemblies you are currently that are currently loaded. So there are some assemblies, for example, sorry, my mic again, the Unity editor assemblies, or for example, inside the inside dash, there is the dash editor assembly. It's not a good idea to include that in obviously at runtime. I will try to solve this issue by guessing which assemblies are editor time and which are not. There are multiple like solutions how to guess that. None of them are 100% perfect. For now, for example, I'm using string pattern matching to check by the default Unity editor assemblies. And then, as I mentioned, you can then add the type you want. You can also find for example, we want particle system, some kind of particle system. So now we just edit this type as an explicitly defined type. So once you have these types specified or scanned, then you can generate the ahead of time DLL. What this will do will generate DLL containing all these types. So we have them in one place. Then we can, by Unity feature, which tells the builder that you want to keep something, basically, we can also generate a link XML where we can also include Odin assembly if you don't include it somewhere else by yourself. So let's just generate and check it out. It already generated the DLL in assets plugins dash AOT. So let's go there. So it generated this DLL, this library for us, uh, which contains all these types, which we explicitly cited or scanned. And then we also generated this link XML file that will tell the linker that we want this assembly preserved, which means that all the types inside this assembly will be preserved. There will be no code stripping happening for them. And it also tells the linker that we want to preserve the dash runtime for the nodes and stuff like that. So by default, for example, we don't really need these dash types inside these scan types because they will be preserved by the dash runtime. So I will also, in the next update, I will remove these that are not needed and are contained inside the dash assembly. If we also included the Odin assembly, we would see that assembly called Odin serializer with preserve all would be included inside this linker. So basically, this is only some of the types that we actually need here that we are using and are potentially could be stripped from the during the build. For example, it is a very low probability that for integer would be stripped, but just on the safe side, we will keep all these types inside this dash AOT DLL, which will then be included and will preserve all the types. You don't really need this DLL if you are building for JIT platforms, JIT targets, which means, for example, Mono. If you are using Mono, you are safe. You don't really need to worry about this. and you can delete it. So again, similar to the debug editor, this is the initial implementation. So probably during some of the next updates, this will get a few more features, and then if we feel that it's the parrot principle, it handles 80% of the mainly the need to have and want to have features, then we will offset any feature request from you guys, which would be nice to have to further releases in the future. So again, similar to the debug editor, if you have any questions, if you have any feature requests, or if there are some bugs, just let me know. And that's all for today. Thanks.